Now, even inside Russia, opposition does seem to be growing to President Putin's war on Ukraine. Don't want to overstate it. He's still a very popular man there, nationalistic country. Don't want to overstate it. And also, of course, is controlling the media. And you should know, too, that opposing Putin can even get you killed. We know a number of people who have suffered that fate. But even though that, despite all that, now one of his former foreign policy advisors has publicly said Putin's war has to stop. And anti-war protesters are prepared to risk arrest, like this grandmother. Can you believe it? In Putin's Russia, a grandmother like that gets arrested just for saying no to war. Can you believe that? Again, we can't exaggerate the anti-Putin sentiment. Still, you're also seeing that the sanctions have made the ruble near worthless. A lot of Russia's foreign reserves are overseas, have been frozen. Companies like Apple have shut the Russian outlets. The stock market hasn't opened all this week because the shares, well, it has started a stampede. They've lost value, maybe half their value. Joining me is a Russian-born Russia expert, Dr. Leonid Petrov, who's a senior lecturer at the International College of Management in Sydney. Dr. Petrov, thank you for your time. It must be a difficult one for you too, being Russian with so much, anti-Putin sentiment, and we must always insist that Vladimir Putin is not all of Russia. Is there any way of knowing what support Vladimir Putin has for his war among the Russian people?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. We know the answer. That's why it's very shameful to acknowledge that more than 60%, 68% according to the Russian Levada Center, which is also recognized by the Kremlin as a foreign agent, support Vladimir Putin and his aggressive action against Ukraine. We only can regret about it, and what we see, and well, you're absolutely right. Russians, particularly those who are overseas, we can see the picture from afar, are now particularly upset about what they hear and see what is going on in Russia right now, because we must admit that the majority of Russians are brainwashed. The 22 years of Putinism hasn't gone away unnoticed. People have been supporting Putin blowing up the apartments back in 1999 when the war against Chechnya started. People in Russia were forced to support Putin's war against Georgia in the year 2008. 2014, annexation of Crimea and the war, fratricidal war in Donbass and Donetsk, Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine were also supported by the majority of population. So now what we can see is that people simply subdue to the fascistic, militaristic and imperialistic rhetoric which comes from Kremlin. It's very regrettable.
But Leonid Petrov, you've described a number of occasions where Vladimir Putin, yes, he was brutal, and he gambled outrageously. Any one of those moves could have gone really bad for him personally and for Russia. But he won. Each one of them, the gamble paid off. With Ukraine, I wonder whether he gambled and will lose. What do you think will happen as Russians realize they wake up every day poorer and poorer? They can't go to the Apple store. They can't, their shares, they can't go to the share market. When they travel, their money is virtually worthless. If they go to the ATM, try to get payments from overseas or whatever, that's not working. Do you see that support as bodies come back from the front actually vanishing for him?
Well, Vladimir Putin is crafty and calculating. He thought through the plan. He gambled, he did, and I believe he did it deliberately. He knew that the world was going to be indignated against that action, and that was part of the plan, to disconnect Russia from the rest of the world. The body bags will not return to Russia because what Russia did just a few months ago, they purchased a number of field incinerators, the mobile crematoriums, which now cremate the hundreds and thousands of bodies of Russian soldiers. Russians who will go, and now there's each morning starts with Russian people running to the ATM machine with the hope that some money or hard currency, dollars, pounds, euros, perhaps would be available, and it's the problem already felt. The bites of the sanctions which have been imposed very swiftly bite not only customers but also banks, including the central bank. What the explanation which Vladimir Putin is giving is that Russia is surrounded by the enemies. Russia is hated by the rest of the world, and that's why Russia must mobilize in the war against the rest of the world, and that's why the Russians need the great leader. And of course, the great leader is in the Kremlin.
Oh, Leonid, you're really painting a grim picture. Finally and quickly, I think you've basically thrown away any hope of this. Can you see any way in which Putin gets deposed by his generals, or certainly not toppled by protests, but voted out, shot, arrested, moved out, whatever, because they would know that they can't move in the West themselves and risk being tried for war criminals if they don't get rid of him?
Well, in normal circumstances, it would be very easy to stop this fratricidal barbaric war. Just one shot would have completely eliminated the criminal leader. But it's not just Putin, it's the elites, the former KGB clan, which support Vladimir Putin. They all have this collective responsibility in this crime. And it's very unlikely that one of them or a narrow circle of people might plot against the person who keeps them living a wealthy life, life which is not transparent to the public, without any risk of persecution and any opportunity for the people to seek justice. So it's very unlikely that those generals, or maybe generals in plain clothes, because they all come from the former KGB circles, the top operatives, the former members of the elite KGB detachments. So they all trust that Putin is their flagman, the person who protects them from the wrath and anger of their own people, and from the righteous retaliation from the neighbors, from Ukrainians, from Westerners, and from Russians who still have dignity to stand up to Putin. They are not going to admit the mistakes, and they will stay with Putin until the last man.
Dr. Leonid Petrov, I invited you on to hopefully give us some hope, but I'm afraid you've called it as it is. And there it is. The West, really, it's up to the West to do something. Thank you so much for your time.